Welcome to Season 2 of the Dr. Nikki Starr Show, a podcast to support you in your spiritual awakening and personal development. As a spiritual teacher, healer, and intuitive coach, my intention is to empower you to live your ultimate potential and your ultimate life. As a former medical doctor and mystic, my role is to bridge the gap between science and spirituality to support you in understanding more of your multidimensional aspects. I share on a diverse range of topics, and it's all to support your greatest becoming. My mission is to continue reaching millions of people for the healing and awakening of humankind for the creation of the new earth. Thank you for being here.
Hello, beloved, and welcome to another episode of the Dr. Nikki Starr Show. I'm your host, Dr. Nikki Starr, and today's podcast episode is about transcending duality and polarity in our reality. It's a rhymey, catchy title. And I feel like the tone, even as I sit down to share this week's podcast with you, the tone feels really different. It feels really soft and supportive and nurturing, like hand holding. A lot of my podcasts can be teaching concepts, and today feels more like a balm, like a soothing balm for any challenges that you may be going through in life. And if right now feels really great for you, you're still going to want to tune in because you can keep a lot of what I'm going to share in your back pocket for moments where you may be challenged. So let's talk a bit about the topics first in the title. Transcending. Transcending, when I say that, I mean to go beyond, to see with another perspective, another set of eyes, to give meaning to something in a different way, in a more expansive way, in a way that takes in more of the whole and a perspective that can serve not only your greatest becoming, but can serve the highest good of all. When I talk about duality and polarity, there's a slight nuance. Polarity is like the opposites of our reality. So when we think of black and white, light and darkness, north and south, east and west, male and female, right? These are like opposites. They're polarized entities, aspects of our reality. And this is part of the nature of our reality. And it does not mean that either is good or bad, even though good and bad could be a form of a polarity. But it's this idea that there's contrast. Next, we get into, and when I speak of duality and polarity, it is a part of this reality. When I speak of duality, I speak of events or situations that are somewhat of an opposite. So they're not in their definition of themselves defined by each other as opposites, but it could be like where you have a celebration and something super challenging happening at the same time. So, for example, you could have a win in your business, like you could have your highest month that you've ever had, but then at the same time have the passing of a loved one happen in the same month. This is what I mean by duality, where within the same context of your reality, you have two experiences that make you feel in the complete opposite way. And emotions are connected to duality and polarity. So you could be feeling love and you can be feeling hate. You can be feeling excited and you can also be feeling depressed, right? You can have all of them existing at the same time. So as humans within our being, we even have like the polarizing organ. So for example, for the sexual organs, the brain is the balancing organ. So in Chinese medicine, even our organs balance each other. So there's like a polarity within our system. And also within humans, we have our emotions. And what defines your experience of life is your perception of it. That's why in personal development work and spiritual awakening work and in your greatest becoming, mindset is a huge part of you living your ultimate potential and living your ultimate life for your greatest becoming, because the stories you tell yourself and what you make things mean has such an impact on how you experience life. And you're crafting reality based on your perception of it as well. So if something happens, you get to decide based on how you give it meaning, if it's a quote unquote good or quote unquote bad thing. And I truly believe that nothing is ever bad. As an isolated circumstance, some things could seem like, oh my gosh, why me? And you could feel that challenge within yourself and that emotionality within yourself. But in the grand scheme of your whole life, sometimes those quote unquote bad situations were really for your greatest good and were really serving. And I'm going to share some examples. And I've gone through so much of my coaching with clients has to do with helping them tell the stories of their lives and see the events that happen in their lives from a perspective of empowerment, of how does this serve me? What did I learn from this situation? How is it changing how I show up or the next action I take? So allowing everything that happens to empower us. And this is one of the ways that we transcend the duality and the polarity. So when you have challenging circumstances, first of all, know that you're not alone. Every single person on this planet, because this is a reality of duality and polarity by its very essence, has challenges. Those who succeed and triumph and transcend have done the work, have the tools, have the mindset to stay in a positive place, to stay in a place where you do your best to keep focus on how this can serve you. How does this serve me? How does this serve my greatest becoming? What have I learned? That's why saying there's no such thing as a failure, because you always learn something. If you begin to tell different stories and see things in a different way from a positive perspective. So it's as if we were taking rose-colored lenses and putting them on our eyes and telling and seeing the situation in its highest form. It's not denial. Like, absolutely, it's not denial. But it's like, okay, this is happening. And it's really important that you see and realize that it takes us out of victim mentality. Whenever we feel like something negative is happening to us, notice the nuance of the word I use, to us. If you think something is happening to you, this is a victim mentality and energy. But if you trust and know things are happening for you, this is an empowering twist on whatever could be happening. So it is your duty, and it is my intention with this episode and with all of my courses and all of my ascension codes to empower you. So my spirituality course, I feel, does a really good job of helping us put things and situations into the lens of serving our greatest becoming and serving our spiritual development. Because I really like to see that moments of duality and spirituality are helping us build spiritual strength. We're becoming stronger in our character, we're becoming more resilient and even more resourceful. And it is a practice, like a meditation, where you consciously choose to focus on the good and to consciously become so self-aware of what your immediate reactivity is that you can breathe in the moment and find your grounding and say, okay, this just happened. How is it serving me? What can I do now? Is there anything else I can even do to change this? Is there anything within my control? Or if this is all outside of my control, then can I just say, like, okay, this is what is right now, and there's nothing I can do, but maybe I can be resourceful and find another way to show up or find another outcome or solution that I need in this moment. And I've had so many challenging moments over the years, and I want to see what feels resonant to share right now. What's coming to mind, which I still have some work to do, it recently came up in an energy session that I had personally, where I was told that I still had some trauma that I was holding around when I got stung by a stingray in Malibu. And it was right before I was coming to Ibiza. And I didn't know I was going to come to Ibiza to live here, but I delayed my flight by a week. And all the events that were surrounding my decision to leave Malibu, it was a lot of challenging moments. Changes in my business, changes and challenges in my home, where there was a rain and there was leaks, and then I had to move and find another place quickly, and then they were doing construction next door, and it was so loud for my purpose and mission and showing up for the courses I was creating, and there were so many things that were testing and trying me. And I hadn't felt the desire to travel, but then something inside me was like, it's time to move. It's time to shift energy. I was in a routine where, yes, I had reached financial status and success in my business status, but even that started to quiet down because I wasn't in the best environment for myself. And I was getting comfortable just staying in the comfort and the monotony. And that's really usually not like me. I had traveled the world for over a decade, and after traveling too much, I felt the need to root down. And then when the pandemic hit, we were kind of bound to our homes. But for me, that was the perfect thing. And living in Malibu, I was on the beach. And so right before coming to Ibiza, I felt like everything was starting to crumble, what I like to call a dismantling. And it's like that quote says, it's like sometimes things have to fall apart so better things can come together. And the thing about humans is if we feel that we are successful or things are going really well, usually we're not quick to want to change things. We usually want to keep things as they are, whether it's some kind of superstition behavior or something, but humans tend to want to keep things the same, especially if they appear like they're working. And in the unknown is where infinite possibilities live. So it actually serves us, if we want to continue expanding and growing, it serves us to be dynamic in our choices and how we're living our lives, and to try new things and to meet new people and to go new places. And so I had been feeling a desire to check out possibly Miami to live, possibly Europe, as my family, and I'm an Italian citizen as well. So my family was very much like, go and live in Europe. Like, your energy, you just seem more European. And I was like, yeah, maybe I could. Why not? And in delaying my flight by a week, I got stung by a stingray. And it's not that common. Apparently it happens on the California coast. I had no idea that they lived in Malibu. And it was it was probably the most pain I ever experienced in my life. And when it happened, I was just like screaming and crying. And I'd been walking out. So what happened that day? Well, the day before, very interestingly enough, one had washed up to shore. And as a ritualist, as a medium who helps energies transcend into the other worlds, you could say, and someone who honors the Tao. And in the Tao, it does talk about burying animals as a way to develop good karma, because we help those souls transition into the next life, and we really help direct the energy in the place where they go. And so I buried the stingray and I blessed its reincarnation. And then I went about my day. So in a way, I felt like I got really good karma points because it was a mammal also, I believe they're mammals, or maybe they're not. They're like sharks, but are sharks mammals? I can't remember. I'm not a biologist. So, and then the next day I went swimming. I always swam in the sea, and I walked out and the tide was really low. So I had to walk very far out to get water up my body because I usually like to dunk underneath the water. And for some reason, I was started to walk horizontally in the water. Like instead of walking further out, I started walking to the side. And then all of a sudden, I stepped and I heard like, and all of a sudden, I felt a horrible pain. And it's like my foot dropped. And I just started screaming because the pain was so horrible. It was a mix of a burning pain plus, like, I don't even know what, but I thought it was a crab that like cut my tendon. That's what I thought happened, because there were crabs along the rocks in Malibu often, and I thought like, oh my god, I just stepped on a crab and it like with its pincer cut me, and I just was screaming and I was trying to like float out of the water, and I was just like, help, and I was just screaming, help, help, help. Finally, I made my way close enough to shore, and with one foot, I was just with my bum on the sand, and I was just trying to push myself out of the water. And there was a house that had construction a few houses down from where I was. And I wasn't directly in front of my house because my house had rocks and a coral reef in front of it. So I was about 10, 12 houses down the shore from my house. And all of a sudden, these construction workers thankfully came to help me, and they picked me up, they put me on the sand, and I had to like hold my leg up, and I was just screaming in horrible pain. And the neighbor whose house I was in front of came down, and a neighbor a few houses came down. He was actually walking on the beach, and they both called 911 and the lifeguards, and there was no lifeguard towers in our strip of beach. And I was just writhing in pain. Like, when you stub your toe, it like hurts for a little while, but then it goes away. Like, this pain was not subsiding. It was like the worst pain that oh, and I was just screaming and screaming. I was like, please call someone. It was like so torturous, and it was like in every cell of my body. And finally, it was like after a half hour or more, it was a really long time. The lifeguards came with a bucket of hot water, and they're like, it's a stingray bite. And so when they I had a laceration, meaning an open wound. It was like a pincer wound at the top, right at the top of the ankle, like where the tendons are. And it was bleeding. But the lifeguards were like, oh, don't worry. Like the hot, put your foot in as hot water as you can. It's just the venom. That's what's hurting you. It's the venom. And so I went, they carried me, they brought me home, they put me in my bath, turned on the hot water, and I had to sit in that bath like the whole day. And over the next days, it wasn't getting any better. And it was anything, it looks like it was getting worse. And my next door neighbor was a plastic surgeon, and he was just like, listen, I know you're all natural since you left Western medicine, but I really recommend you take antibiotics because it's the ocean and there's so much biome, and you don't know if there's an infection brewing. It's quite red. It's very swollen. I just really recommend it. So I was like, okay, and I took a course of antibiotics, and still it wasn't better. And I had my flight, and I was already due out of my home. I had to pack all my things and arrange movers and put things into storage, all with this foot that I could barely walk on. I really should have been like elevating my foot. I really should have gone to get imaging, but I really had no time because I started to wonder if I did cut a tendon or something, because it was just weird, my foot. And when I landed in Miami, I basically went straight to the hospital. And at the hospital, they did imaging, and it turns out it cut my tendon. And there was debate from one group whether I get surgery. The orthopedics were like, no. The podiatrists were like, yes. I ultimately decided on no surgery because they found the outcomes were different. And as a dancer, I'd have increased range of motion if I didn't do surgery. In the end, I'm happy I didn't do surgery. But when I tell you, what seemed like a really tragic incident where so many people were telling me, what are you doing traveling? You should go back home. I'm like, well, I put my stuff in storage. I'm about to go find a new home. Like, go to your parents, go wherever. And I was determined, as a determined woman, as I've always been. And I decided to continue my journey. And what this did was it opened my life up to people helping me in a way that I hadn't been helped before as an independent woman. Whether it was being in the airport and being wheeled around in a wheelchair, whether it was people carrying me at the sea so I could go in the ocean because the sand was so unstable for my foot. I had so many people carrying me and talking to me, asking about what happened, and it just opened me up to receive, to be honest. And so what could look like, it's been a year plus healing journey that happened in the beginning of July of last year. And now at the time of filming this podcast, we're in the middle of September. And I would say it's not 100%. When I point my foot a lot, I can still feel where it happened. And whenever I get body work, my fascia gets worked on there. And so it's a constant, and thankfully I can lift all my toes. So I actually didn't lose anything. It was a moment of being put out of commission, but I really trusted in the healing process of my body. And at the time, I was just like, why did this happen? And I was so upset and devastated because I felt like not right before I go on this journey. But it happened, I felt, to be like, get out of here. And stingray medicine is so powerful. It's one of the most powerful in the Aboriginal culture. And if you also subscribe to animal totem medicine, where when you come into a close encounter with an animal that feels quite significant, especially an animal in the wild, it can often carry medicine for you, like a message, a messenger. Sometimes if you might see an animal that's very rare, or it comes and it flirts with you, or it touches you, or just something, you can read and you just can Google like stingray medicine, stingray animal totem, and something along those lines. And you'll get from different websites what the significance of the animal is telling you in your life. Like, what is the divine message that this animal brings into your life? And it was about moving. It was about like taking action, and it was on my right foot, which is the masculine side also. So it was, instead of wanting me to slow down, it really was about like, let's go step into action. And there was a lot of other meanings that in this moment, I forgot. I didn't realize I was going to tell this story. I would have researched it, but there was a lot of powerful medicine. So I do feel, and a lot of people made a joke of like, what if you become like the stingray woman? You know how there's like Spider-Man, and I do feel that what that experience did is it catapulted me and catalyzed me into a deeper process of healing things that were so deep that I wasn't able to access. But with the pain and the recovery period and literally going, and I worked with several healers to really work on that foot, and that between homeopathy and body work and someone who really understood the nerves and the fascia, that I was able to access things that were coming up that were ancient inside of my energy centers. Even it was quite fascinating to go through this experience and be like, what seemed like the biggest tragedy and the biggest pain was a gift and a portal into even greater and deeper healing. And even just yesterday, my beloved, he experienced a series of events that were just trying and testing him. Like these, when I say challenges, I'm talking about from the biggest life challenges to the mundane things that happen every day in our lives. And it's almost like we couldn't make this up. Like, he had gone to the grocery store to pay, and like his card was not working on his phone, even though it had money on it, even though he unfroze it, like didn't work. Then he went back again later after he like called and sorted it out, went to pay, the phone died. So he comes home and there's like a grocery store nearby. He goes, he buys some chicken, we walk to there. We're walking home. He went a bit faster up the hill than I did. And so he's sitting on this wooden railing waiting for me, which helps to prevent anyone from driving off or falling off the side of a cliff. And while he's checking his phone, he puts the chicken down and it slides off the railing down the cliff. Then we go to the beach a little bit later for a sunset walk. and we put our flip-flops down, and I was going to hide them between some chairs, and he's like, no, they're fine there. So I just listened to what he said and honored his leadership, and we start walking. We come back, our flip-flops are gone. And earlier in the day, he was like more upset by some of the events. But by the end of the day, we like couldn't help but laugh, or like, let's just go to sleep, like have the day pass on by. And and we were making a joke of like, he's being tested. And I felt it was because he's being tested to learn how to respond to these situations. Like when you can just laugh and be lighthearted, this is true spiritual mastery. And it's not like in denial, but it's like those things are completely out of anyone's control. So when it seems like, oh my gosh, this is the worst day ever, everything just keeps going wrong for me or to me. What was beautiful is when we were down on the beach, we went into one of the stores that we often go to. And one of the owners, we told them what happened. And they were like, you can try to go. They keep some of the stuff they find on the beach, so you can ask about it. And he's like, I'll drive you guys home so that we didn't have to walk barefoot up the mountain. And I should say the hill, but it's kind of like a mountain. And it was just beautiful to see how, and I really was doing my best to just like witness it all as like a loving partner without trying to teach or preach. And that's been a lot of my lessons in relationship, especially as a spiritual teacher and a spiritual guide and a coach for people, to like not coach my partner unless he's asking for it, and just to hold space and love and compassion. So that's the point of this podcast, essentially. Like, I'm here holding space for you. And if you're going through any challenge, like whether it's financial challenge, like there's been moments that my bank account has been negative, and there was a moment that I went bankrupt, and there was a moments that my credit cards are maxed out. And we have moments in life that are challenging, but like, where are we now? We got through it. Like, everything is going to be okay. I find that we oftentimes waste a lot of energy trying to figure out the challenge. Like, how do I get out of this situation? Instead of regrouping and really coming back into ourselves and coming into self compassion, holding space for ourselves, acceptance of what is, and then making a choice from an empowered place of, okay, this has happened. Now what? And sometimes you need a little break. Sometimes you need that moment for meditation. Sometimes the healing really helps, whether it's an energy healing, whether it's some breath work to get out the frustration and the anger. And that's another key piece. I feel that anytime you go through any challenge or trauma, it's so important that you express what you feel. So if something happens and it's like really frustrating, if you just do like, better to do that than to keep it repressed in your body, because trapped emotions create disease. So many skin conditions, so many diseases first live within the body, within the energy body, and then they become physically manifest. And it's often the challenging, dualistic moments, the polarizing moments where we get triggered and where those emotions come up. And it's ultimately our job as conscious, self-aware beings to allow the emotions to flow, because emotions are energy in motion. So one of the biggest practices, tools, self-healing things that you can do is to express your emotions. And it's not at another person, but in a safe space. And I find that healing sessions are really powerful. And if it is the type of energy that's more on the anger spectrum, there's a lot of different things that you can do. In the bonus content of this module, I'm going to take you through a process of how to safely express emotion and hold space for yourself when you're going through a challenging moment or a dualistic moment. And so with that, thank you so much for being here today. Remember that you are going to get through this. Whatever challenging situation is happening, you are so supported by the universe. just the fact that you're showing up with self-awareness, with devotion to your path, devotion to your greatest becoming. Everything sent is for your greatest becoming. The invitation is to look at the silver lining. If you can't see it yet, keep going. The invitation is not to try to figure it out and exhaust yourself. Accept and move on. What can you do now? The invitation is not to suppress your emotions, but to express them and eventually see it with lightness of heart and laugh about what it is you cannot control and do what it is you can. The invitation is to continue to heal yourself and mostly have self-compassion and remember that everyone is doing their best, as are you, and the universe is here to support you. And so with that, I send you so much love. Thank you for doing this great work, and I'll see you inside the bonus content.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Dr. Nikki Starr Show. Please like this podcast and share it with anyone you feel would benefit. Subscribe to the podcast to receive bonus content, and remember, every Monday the video version goes live on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for being on the ascension path with me and for doing this great work. Sending love until next time.